Alright, so hello everyone. In today's video, we're gonna do this motion. As a woman, this house would embrace being successful but intensely disliked over attempting to achieve community success and approval. And then we're opening opposition. I think this is quite an interesting debate to clash against. This is from Sydney Mini. And yeah, let's get right into it. So, I guess like a few things that I immediately am thinking about is Gov could just hammer down on like all the problems of trying to seek out community success and approval. And I want to give a different reframe, or at least a different um like a very reasonable version of what this looks like. And then this is the framing I would do. I immediately know that I want to do this framing. I don't want to double down on like the this being the most important thing in the debate. I just want to say that this is quite important. That the context is um so like capitalist forces will exist on either side in the same way community and family will still exist on either side. Why is this the case? um because work will still be necessary, and most people in life cannot always opt out of family and community, and are in some sense still quite proximate to them because of the need for emotional and financial support a lot. So this debate is not about whether like success is good or better than community in general, but it is about whether we as the actor should consider this to be our primary goal in life, our primary goal and yeah, our primary goal in life, like what matters to us most, and how do we spend our time most um spend most of our waking hours. I love that term. Right? So I think that's great, quite fine, quite good context. The stance immediately would just be to explain that um we prefer that this individual attempt to seek community success and approval, which likely looks like the following. What does a community success and approval mean? It means volunteering in social civic organizations as part of your community. It means to be relatively more politically active than not in um the in lobbying on behalf of and campaigning for your community. And it also means to be involved in in social relationships with your community members, like your neighbors, your peers, and etc. So I think like one way to also explain this, by the way, is that like I don't want to get into like the weeds of like, oh, community is like an arbitrary concept. Like community can be anything you want. Like I think we'll just be concrete and say that community is most likely the um people that you grew up with, that you know very intimately, and a lot in your life, and also your family. And we accept that for a lot of people, they may have grievances or difficulties with these community members, but what we argue for in op is that it is more likely that you can, and this is quite important for me to mention, is that if you pursue community success and approval, this is a relationship that is far better and easier to mend and improve in the long run. And I think that's quite important, by the way. That's quite important. That's quite important. So that then allows me to do the arguments. So the first argument is so just to tell you my process in thinking about the argument, I know that I've already narrowed down what the clash actually is about. It's not about whether like, oh, is a promotion good, or is community success good in general, but it's about like the relative access you have towards appreciating your work, or the relative access you have towards appreciating your community, or the relative leverage and control you have within your work, or the relative control you have within your community. So I would really just make arguments on this specific basis whenever I'm comparing the two, whether like you're gonna do this or that, because like um I think you could still make an argument on like it's relatively more successful, that you'll do better at your job than being successful in your community. But I don't want to get bogged down by that battle. Like I could make that argument. Maybe I might tell my partner to think about it a little bit more. But right now I don't want to make it for this prep time. I want to make very clean arguments that clash against Gov and that already clarify what the debate is. So I would make the first argument. I would say that like success and approval is more likely to be negotiable with your own expectations. And then the second argument would be community success and approval is more likely to be long lasting in terms of fulfillment. So this argument, it's about the effort that you put is good in and of itself, and it also allows you to flourish your own identity and more deeply connect with other people's stories. So even if Gov says that you have to sacrifice or overextend yourselves, this isn't necessarily a bad thing. It can instead be a deeply fulfilling thing, because compared to sacrificing in your job for your employer, these kinds of sacrifices are more deeply fulfilling. And I would probably explain that a little bit more in terms of this. And then here's where I could like elaborate a little bit more about like fulfillment as a woman in this particular setting. Like you are able to speak with other women community members in this particular kind of safe space, whereas the space you have in the comparative is one where you are disliked by other women, and that you have to actively throw them under the bus in the pursuit of success. So the implication is that you lose support systems, and this is not fulfilling. It's not gonna be good, not gonna be happy, not gonna be a fulfilling experience. And then the first argument, I want to elaborate that. So now the second argument I think is solid. Like I don't need to touch that a little bit more right now. I'd probably spend more time on the first argument now. community success and approval is more likely to be negotiable with your own expectations, I would immediately just go into the premise to say that like pursuing success is a never ending endeavor that that creates more unhappiness for women than not. And then I would probably explain this a little bit more. What that looks like, it looks like the social comparisons. Social comparisons um looks like you have to compromise uh with your employer and please the men in the workplace um while being disliked by other women. Social comparisons with other women in your job and occupation become more severe. And then even if you get promoted and even if you become successful, there is almost always another man in the workplace that will assert themselves over you, and you will become more increasingly frustrated as a consequence of this. And then here's where I would do the comparison now immediately was the comparative. We accept that the patriarchy and these systems still exist within community, right? Like patriarchy still exists with your parents, with your community members, in religion, etc., etc. But it is about the relative leverage that women have when they are a member of this community than not, or when they're a member of this community and are actively involved. So active involvement in the community allows you to have a greater and deeper reputation that gives you a lot of power and a lot of um happiness and self-worth. So like there's two aspects here. It's like the number one, it's like the aspect on like, so even if it is motivated partially by the patriarchy, like like you are serving the community because like you're a mom or something like that, like that is still good. But also it simply means that you can renegotiate your identity more and you are still better better appreciated for your efforts. Whereas like I think the difference is if you're more involved or more effortful in being disliked or trying to be more successful, you are only going to realize that you have less and less influence than you actually had. Like you lose a lot of support systems, you lose a lot of traction, and actually like even in the best case, like the best case is that best case of gov is that you have more money and um more power in the workplace, but your access to translating this into happiness for yourself is very doubtful, right? Like, I mean, more money means you have to purchase more luxury goods to justify your promotion, and more power in the workplace also means that you have more responsibilities. So I think it's quite important. Like, it's a quite important way to conclude this argument. Yeah, no, I think this is fine. I'll probably spend the rest of prep time or other stuff just thinking about like how I could turn this into a more responsive case. Um, I might move some material into some responses. I might decide to put more detail onto this. I think the it was a good intuitive effort that in the middle of the prep time I immediately wanted to make it more specific to women in particular and the safe spaces that they'd create and other women that they also relate with and what roles they're expected to fulfill and to what extent are they exposed to the patriarchy. Um I think the only other thing is that like maybe I should have made another emphasis on the actor debate part where I'd say that like yeah, we as an actor, we actually don't know what we care about the most. We don't know if we'll care about the family the most. We don't know whether we'll care about work for the rest of our lives. But usually most people eventually do tend towards caring about their family and their community more than all other things because of XYZ. I mean that's perfectly fine. I don't need to say that immediately right now. Well, but I do know that that's quite an important part of this debate as well, especially since like everything else in the debate is not that like it's not that specific. It's not that like clear as to like where you are gonna be successful or what community you are a part of, whether you're a privileged community or a minority community. But again, it's about the averages or the most people that we're talking about. And I think that these arguments, the way I've framed them and built them, relatively apply in those cases, and that's very, very good. All right, so make your comparisons very specific. And I think that's the lesson that I'd say from today's video. Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.